I welcome everybody this evening to our meeting of the Linn-Mar Board of Directors, and I call this meeting together at 5 o'clock, 5:01.
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, thank you. John, would you please determine a quorum?
Director Buchholz?
Here.
Director Foss?
Here.
Director Langston?
Here.
Director Mansour?
Here.
Director Maury?
Here.
Director Thomas?
Here.
President Lau Lancaster.
And I'm here as well. To keep the meeting flowing tonight, I will announce each agenda item and request a motion or a report. So let's try that out. Item number 200, adoption of our agenda. May I have a motion, please?
Motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Evan and a second by Midhat. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, at this time, I invite Superintendent Weir, first night of all of ours, welcome, 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 to share our district highlight moment.
Awesome. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Really excited to take a chance in kind of my first step as your superintendent to recognize some of our kids that we wanted to highlight this year. So we sent invitations to 3 of our student athletes. We had 3 Gatorade Players of the Year. One of them is in attendance tonight, and so you'll get to meet her here in just a minute. Our other 2 couldn't make it. One is already moving off to college. So we're also super excited to congratulate Drea Kern in girls soccer. She's the daughter of Danielle and Dustin, but is currently off preparing for getting ready for college stuff. And then our third athlete is Charlie Sarsfield, and the Linn-Mar boys won baseball game on Friday night, so they're playing tonight in Des Moines, so he couldn't be here either. So hopefully we'll be able to recognize Charlie. He's the son of Angie and Chad. Hopefully we can recognize him in August. But at this time, I would like to welcome up to the front Abby Mecklenburg. Abby is a 2-time winner of the Gatorade Athlete or Player of the Year for our girls track and field. So her parents are back there, Sarah and Mike. Thank you for joining us. And Abby, on behalf of the school district, we just wanted to say congratulations. I understand in talking to you beforehand that you'll be doing something with the USA team. Can you tell us about what that'll be?
Yeah, so I won nationals this year at U20 Worlds, or U20 Nationals, and so I get to compete at U20 Worlds in August.
Yay.
Awesome.
Wow.
Woo. Future possible Olympian there, so that's great. All right, Abby, come on out front. I got a certificate for you.
Where are you going to school? Where are you going to go to college?
You guys want to stand up?
I want to, not us in it. You can do it, but let's have a good picture.
Mom, Dad, you want to be in the picture? Can I get one?
Yes, I think that'd be lovely.
Come on up front. Here you go.
And then you're going to turn that way. And we're in your background. No, you're in it, so Director of Communications will take the picture.
There you go.
Congratulations.
All right, good, thank you.
Thank you very much. Congratulations again, and good luck at Worlds. We are on to item number 400, audience communication. Do we have anyone signed? As we do not have anyone signed up this evening to speak to the board, we will continue with item number 500, our informational reports. At this time, we have item number 501, Indoor Activity Center and Associated Renovations Project Report. Whew. I'm surprised you didn't make notes on that.
Could you hand that pen down today? There we go. Thanks.
All right, good evening, everybody. This is an update on the Indoor Activity Center progress since last time we had an update, and if I remember right, that was early May or late April. Time kind of flies. So with me here is the team from OPN, and I'll let them introduce themselves here real quick. Most of them are familiar faces.
Yep. I'm Vicki, and I'm going to just do a minute of housekeeping. I want to let you all know that I'm retiring next month. So this will be my last Linn-Mar board meeting. It's been a super pleasure to work with you all over many, many years. So I've really enjoyed it, but I do want to introduce a new face to you. Toby Olson is a partner at OPN. He's been a partner for over 5 years, and he's been with OPN for 17 years. He has a great portfolio in K-12 as well as libraries, and he'll be leading our K-12 efforts in Eastern Iowa, so you'll be seeing a lot of him. He'll become me, only better. And I think you all know Matthew?
Sure, yes. Matthew Stewart, Project Manager for the Indoor Activity Center.
Perfect, thanks guys. So we'll jump right in here, kind of a two-part update. The first part is kind of the finance update. Obviously with the change in the legislation for SAVE and diverting up to 25% to the Peter Fund over the next 5 years, our borrowing ability there has changed, which is kind of why we're here and probably not digging a hole in the ground at this point, to be honest. So we'll go through the finance part. I'll go through that and then I'll turn it over to these guys and talk about the design portion of it. All right, so this should look really, really familiar. So this is present day what we believe our capital projects funding is with our revenues from SAVE, Pearl, and PEPL, and then also what we expect for current expenditures. So if somebody compares this to last time, it is a touch different, and the reason for that is if we look down in the PEPL fund, the purple line, the transfers to the debt service fund, we know exactly what those numbers are now, so they're no longer projections, but they're actual dollars because of the issuance of the PEPL notes. So down on the bottom right-hand corner, the red circle, that number is actually a tick higher than it was last time. So I think I've said this many times, but these documents are living and breathing. As soon as we know more information, we add in there, so we try to live in the present day as much as possible. So as it stands right now, PEPL's issued. We don't have any other current issuances within this projection. At the end of 2035, we're projecting a balance of $14.8 million. All right, so a little storytelling here. After the legislation changed, we said we can't borrow our $55 million that we were planning on borrowing because of this. So I talked to Piper Sandler, Matt Gillespie at Piper Sandler, and asked Matt, what can we issue now with the new projections of the SAVE revenue, knowing that they were going to be lower over time? How much can I borrow and when can I borrow it? So we could still do an issuance in 2027. That would be, the issuance would be for $15 million. The revenue that would bring in to use towards capital projects would be just about $13 million. And you may say, John, that doesn't make any sense. What happens to $2 million? With this issuance, we would be required to have a reserve fund. We had reserve funds on the two issuances for the performance venue. It's 10%. It sets in a bank account. It gains interest. The reason that is there is if you would default and not be able to make a payment, you have money there to make a payment and give you time to figure out how am I going to make the rest of my payments. Generally speaking, that does nothing but sit in a bank account and collect interest until your borrowing is paid off, and then it returns back into your SAVE fund. So, but that is really the main difference in that. Borrowing $15 million, that's about 1.5, so that puts you down to about 13.5, and then there's issuance cost that gets you down to the 13 that would be usable funds towards the project. One little caveat, or maybe something that I know I haven't seen, many of you probably haven't seen in this, is remember we were concerned about our 1.25 coverage ratio. So on this page, that is in the far right screen. And what that is saying is that we're bringing in $1.25 for every dollar that we have in debt. So you will see in the red box to the left of that, there's a negative 35 or negative 30,000 and then a negative 95,000. So what that is we would be required to put those dollars in escrow. So $125,000 total in escrow, because that would then keep us at our 1.25 million. So that is not money that we lose. That is money that we, again, just have to tuck away so that we can say, yes, we have enough dollars in order to maintain our 1.25 coverage ratio. A little bit of a uniqueness there that we haven't seen before. Overall, $125,000 out of pocket towards that escrow for a $15 million issuance. Probably not that large of a deal when you just look at that percentage-wise, but that was unique from probably any other borrowings that we've seen up to this point, so I wanted to make sure that I did cover that. All right, so what does this mean if we say, yeah, let's go ahead and move forward with this issuance? What does this look like? So same table we saw before, big red arrow, that's pointing out what our payments would be towards that save revenue bond over the course of the next 10 years. So we'd issue them in 2027. First payment isn't due until FY28 or the 27-28 school year. Remaining payments go through there for this 10-year timeline. And then that brings us down to kind of the number that I think all of us have been trying to pay a bit of attention to is what is our balance at the end of the 10 years. So that brings that down to 9.3. I'm going to skip back just 2 pages from 14.8. So about $5.5 million is what that issuance would lower our ability to do other things over the next 10 years. So just to kind of summarize that real quick on what is the possible funding for this, the new possibility of funding going forward. We know we have the $29 million from PEPL. We've issued that, it's been received, it's in the bank. We have an option of issuing $15 million out of SAVE for a net of 13 towards the project, which would give us a total overall possible funding for this project of $42 million. I'm not saying that's the route that we necessarily want to go, but it is a possibility, which I don't know if you would have asked me 2 months ago when this legislation was near finalized. If I would have thought we would have had the ability to issue anything out of SAVE, I probably would have said no. So maybe just having the ability is a bit of a good news. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yep.
On this slide, either one, does this still show the indoor activity facility money?
Yeah, so it shows our PEPL issuance within this, yes.
Okay, so it does show what we have to pay for the phase, if we are phasing the projects, right?
So really what's the easiest way to explain this? Those payments are really what our transfers are to the debt that we've issued.
Yep.
That covers that payment. So in that aspect, the expenses that are included towards that indoor activity center are paid from the 29 million we borrowed. So we don't necessarily owe to the project, but we owe to the debt. So our payments to the debt is reflected in here. On the very first page, it's only the PEPL. On the second page like this, that would include the possible issuance of SAVE.
So basically, phase 2 would be 13 million. Instead of going up to 53, we'd go up to 42, is what you're saying we have the option to do.
Correct. Yep. So if you want to kind of to reword that a little bit, Britt, you know, before we said we could borrow 55 million, now that number's come down to 42 million. Yep.
And as far as the timing of the second borrowing, can you give some background behind like how that decision was made for that? At what time that would be, was it just like as soon as possible, or is there more strategic thought behind that?
Yeah, so I think my original question to Matt was, when can we borrow 35 million from SAVE? Because that was what we had kind of talked, I think that was the maximum, 31 million, so I was a little bit off there. 31 million is what we have approved that we could borrow. Just when could we do that? Just a pretty simple question. And he said, well, you can't borrow all that at once anytime in the near future. Like, yep, okay, so if I split that into 2, what does it do? And there's a potential of a 2030 issuance on top of this. The amount that goes to escrow gets pretty steep in there, so we need to do some further cash flow calculations to get to that. So I said, Matt, let's just hit pause there. How much can I borrow in 2027? What is my maximum? And then that's when we came back to this to say it's $15 million. So again, kind of like we've talked, like what comes first, right? Do we need to know what our budget is, or what's a project going to cost? Like I feel like that there's decisions both ways there to understand how do you make one without the other. So this is good information as we get further along and say, yes, this is the project we need. What can we issue? Where do we want to issue it? We can fine tune timing and such, because it may be that potentially depending what the project is, what cash flow looks like out of PEPAL as far as out of our PEPAL notes to pay for a project. We may not need to borrow out of SAVE until 2028 because we have enough funding to get us through year end of 2027. So there's still a lot of moving parts that go into this to actually know where exactly we're going to stand. Just like in the PEPAL, right? We had projections for what our payment should be. Now that it's final, those payments are a little bit less than we thought. So there's a little bit more cash flow there. So it's ever changing on kind of the fine details as we get into this.
Question, can you explain, what would be the trigger for why we need now all of a sudden an escrow account that's brand new? I'm concerned that that's saying they're concerned that we won't be able to make payments, or they've seen other schools. What is that that's triggering that safety net that we haven't had before?
Yep, great question, Katie. So really what that is I would say in all borrowings previous to this, we've been able to structure our borrowing or have enough incoming revenue to keep our coverage ratio at that 1.25. So what this is saying is that there's a couple years in there where we need to withhold $30,000 and withhold $95,000 because our coverage ratio would drop below 1.25. So what that escrow account is for is saying, I am not going to bring in enough revenue, but I'm going to prove to the lending companies that I'm going to put these dollars into account so that my escrow account and my incoming revenue lets me maintain that 1.25 coverage ratio. I would guess that this is new for everybody because of such the drastic change in legislations that reduced our revenue so much that in past history, you planned for this and only borrowed or structured your borrowing so you maintained 1.25. But because of the change in legislation and where we are within this project, this is a possibility that's come up because of that.
So I understand I understand why escrow, to keep the rate up. My question would be, where does the escrow fund, like what fund does that come out of to cover escrow? Because you can't really borrow money to put in escrow to cover what you're borrowing. So it's got to come from somewhere else. So where's it coming from?
Yep, so where it would come from is from our cash reserves and our SAVE fund.
Okay.
Barry had a question.
I'm sorry.
No, Barry.
I have two questions. The first one is, now, just to put common sense on this, we're still looking at doing phase one. And anything above that is just reserves for us. Am I understanding that, or are we expanding phase one?
Well, I don't know that that's a decision that's fully been made by the board yet, Barry.
Okay.
So these are still kind of options on what that looks like.
Okay.
Approve the 29 million, which we called phase one, but we don't know what phase one is yet. I'm assuming that's the next part of this.
So-
And then he's saying an updated projection is that if we want to look at what phase two could be, we potentially have $13 million to do that.
And then I think what you're saying is we're at that crossroads. Are we building a building that is all the things we want and need at this time, or are we building a building based on funding that we would have available? Where's the push? Which one will be the one that will kind of win out? Is that what you're hearing too, Barry?
Exactly.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, and then there's another question to this, and this is more political. And so maybe some of our folks from legislative, sorry. So I try to listen to all these speeches and trying to listen to all of this stuff. And I question, there was some discussion that they might regroup a little bit and pull back some of these. Am I understanding that right, or did I hear?
Well, so it was interesting. Part of the language around the law was this doesn't go into effect for another year, and it gives us time to fix anything we missed next session, which is just a terrible way to pass a law. That's just, doesn't matter which side you're on, that's a terrible way to pass a law. But yes, they gave themselves cover since they pushed it through at the last minute of session to say, next session, if we realize that we did something wrong, we could fix it next session. But as it stands, this is the law, and these are the numbers.
So don't count on it.
I wouldn't want to change the projections or anticipate anything until they change the law.
So what I'm hearing right now is we do have legislation that has created some both opportunities and challenges for us. Having done that, now we're going to go with what we have. We don't know what tomorrow's changes will be, but we know what we have. So at some point, you're asking us to give more direction because we're at a standstill a little bit. How far do we want to push this project? And
Well, I think it's important to know what the phase, what have they come up with since the last time we talked about this.
Yeah, I just keep thinking, I mean, 2
Yeah.
months from now, everything could change again, 3 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, no matter what, all things change in November.
Yeah, I think, you know, the way this seems to be structured is we're going to understand what the potential pool of money is. And I'd also wanted to say that we're assuming 29 is enough for phase one, but if we're not starting phase one for another year, I mean, if costs increase, you know, what we think is phase one now could bleed into that 13 million when it actually comes due. So I thank you for like explaining like the different pools of money and how that looks. I'm with you guys. There's so many hypotheticals about what could change, and they could cut PEPAL back and retro whatever. But if any other board member has questions about the financing piece, I think I've heard several people curious about, you know, what phase one looks like, what potential phase two could look like. We all seem to be ready for that part of the conversation.
Yes,
Oh, Evan?
agreed.
No, I was gonna, John, I just wanted to get in just so I appreciate you trying to provide this potential for the option for the 13 million out of the save. I just want to clarify that, I mean, I understand that there are, that we're looking at a decrease down of 5.5 million into, 9,300,000, 9.3 million. But this sort of, as implied by the forced escrow payments, this puts us pretty tapped, correct? I mean, this is the reason you're doing it is because that number is the maximum.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm just making sure that we have that all in terms of our minds of it's like, to me, there's degrees of this is available and this is the maximum, right? And I just was trying to make sure that before I said that's what I'm getting at here, is that this is not necessarily just like, hey, this is an option. This is, no. This is the maximum.
Yep. So to add to that a little bit, Evan, so really what tells us that is what is our coverage ratio, right? So you can see in that right-hand column, we're at 1.25 or just above until 2038, I believe. So 2039, we jump to 2.0. Now, there is still a ton of best guesses in this, and the people at Piper Sandler are arguably the best in the state at that best guess. And those three guesses are, what's our retail sales in the state going to do? Go up or down? How many students statewide will there be? And how many students will there be at Linn-Mar? So obviously a lot of things that can change for the better or for the worse in that. So these are very conservative estimates on that front, which then gives us that ratio.
Random question that I do not want follow-up questions to, so don't ask me anything. If they did the thing with the rumor where they increase sales tax, SAVE still only pulls 1 penny off of that, right? It doesn't, like SAVE wouldn't increase when they increase sales tax?
Not to my knowledge. I think the way it's written right now is it's 1%. So,
okay.
But now if they write new legislation, could that change? I mean, I guess it could, but
Okay.
I don't know.
It's like, it's an absolute, not a relative. It's not a percentage.
I understood it the second time you said it. I just didn't catch it the first time.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't
Like I said,
mic'd.
random, and I don't want to like dive into a whole
Yep.
thing, but it just, there's been discussion of, well, if we keep cutting property tax and income tax, we could make up the difference with increasing sales tax. And I was just curious, because I haven't read SAVE word for word, so I didn't know if it was relative or exact. Thank you.
All right, with that, I'll turn it over to OPN.
All right, when we were here, May 6th, I think it was, we had a work session, and you left us with the task of working with John and the stakeholder group, the steering committee, to come up with options on how we can phase this work. I just want to go back to what we talked about were critical missions to how we were going to approach that as a team. And first, those critical elements that had to go into phase one, we talked about the storm shelter. That was an agreement when we did the performance venue, so we know that's a requirement. We also have to have primary mechanical room, centralized space that we're going to have to feed out to these areas. We talked a little bit about that last time, and we're going to have more clarification on that tonight. And then we talked about maintaining that east drive around the competition gym on the east side of the high school. So those were things that we had to maintain or we had to include in phase one. We also reminded you last time about what were the original priorities, and several of you have been part of many discussions with a broader stakeholder group, but we said court space, weight room, wrestling room, and team rooms. Some of those are a little bit in conflict with the critical phases, right? Like we know that storm shelter, that is, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. So when we left you at that time, we reminded you again that these were our last estimates on the whole project. If we did everything, 55.8 million, and we had divided this up into A, B, C, D, and E. You're seeing some new nuances to this diagram, and I'm going to go through that in the next one, where we've pulled out that E is kind of made up with kind of a catch-all with some of the systems, like it contained that whole mechanical systems piece. So if you look at how that breakdown came together, and you look at it, area E, and you pull it over, in general, that field house was a little over $20 million. But then that 30 million was also made up of that core mechanical space. So if you look over on the right, your heart is that kind of core mechanical system, but it's got to feed everything down to your pinkies and little toes with your circulatory system. So you think about with your mechanical system, that's kind of what we're representing here. So you need that MEP core of that 4.2 million, no matter where you phase. You have to have that core system. You might not have all the equipment initially, but you need the space so that when you do a phase two, it's adequate to accommodate that full mechanical and electrical and plumbing kind of heart of your systems. And then you pulled out just the portion of that had to do with the C mechanical was about 1.1 million. And then when it says C and E structure, it talks about where that weight room was. It fell in area C, and I'm going to show you another diagram, but it's including that structure includes the top, the roof, where we had penthouse equipment on the roof. It includes that middle layer that was the weight room, and it includes a lower layer that had that storage and mechanical systems. And I wanted to show it two different ways, thinking that this is an easy way to understand it. So over on the left, you have a diagram, what we call a section. So it's kind of that sandwich of that C area, that dotted area above E on the main level. That's shown over on the left, where we have the penthouse on the top, that weight room, which was part of C pricing, but really, honestly, that was, things like your floor and your finishes in there. So it was not a ton. And then the mechanical, and you think about that whole structure area, that was lumped into the E cost. So when you said, go into this now and start to phase this, pull apart these prices and see how can we repackage this to give us some options for a phase one. So does that make sense? Because I want to make sure that makes sense before we go on. Okay, we just wanted to show it two ways, so we thought, okay, this would speak to most everybody, okay? So then what we did was we looked to see what could we do, and remember that when we started too, we were thinking in that $29 million range, and we were trying to say, what do we do? So we're going to show you three options, and then we'll show you a summary sheet so that we can discuss them all. The first one was what you kind of discussed at our last meeting, where you said, well, what if we took A, B, C, and D, and we did that work? What would that look like? So when we take those costs we dissected from E, re-add them into here, where we would have to put mechanical penthouse up above, and we'd have that weight room still to the south of the competition gym. We would just lop off the field house part, the court part, and the track part, and that could be a phase two. So this is kind of showing you what initially we were talking based on the very first plan for the project overall. Option two, we said, one of our team members said, hey, what if we didn't do anything to the south of the gym and we put the fitness and weight room on top of the storm shelter to the north? So when you look at that option, on the left you see lower level. We still have to have that mechanical space. So instead of being to the south of the gym, we would put it below that storm shelter, so below that wrestling area and team room area. And so on that main level, you'd still do all those renovations that we discussed in B, all those team rooms and the training and film room. And then you would do the wrestling rooms as we had them with those team rooms, but you'd put another level on top. And that's where you'd add the weight room and fitness space. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, then we looked at a third option and said, well, what if we took those fitness and weight room spaces, put them in addition to the east of the existing competition gym? And there was some discussions about synergies between the competition gym and that weight room, and eventually if you do put gym space or courtroom space to the south of the competition gym, it'd be a nice connection between the two. So if you look at that diagram, again, we have to have that lower level mechanical space. So we're still showing it up where the storm shelter is. We'd bury it down there on a lower level. On that main level, we'd still have that B and A, like we've shown them in previous options and the original option. So that design of A and B pretty much stays the same. We take off here, just like we did the last option too, we take off the work in the existing auxiliary gym. But here on the upper level, you'll see on the main level we have the weight room, and it would be on the same level as the competition gym. So basically, you know those emergency exits on the east side of the gym? You'd exit those and go into a corridor that you could go north to get to the team rooms and to the wrestling spaces, or eventually, maybe if you put in addition to the south for courts, you could go south, or you go straight out into the weight room. And then over on the right, we'd put a second level above that weight room, and that's where we could have fitness. It could overlook the weight room below. These are just concepts, but to give you an idea of what we could do. And that option landed around $31.5 million. So here is where we'll have discussion. So we've got all three options laid out here. Would love to hear your questions. What we've done so far is we've worked with a kind of a hybrid steering committee. We've worked with John and Andy and Nathan. Amy was part of it, and we had Jeff was part of it, and Chris and Dan, and they got feedback from their people. And where they landed when you said phase, they felt like even though court space was one of those primary needs that we identified early on, that we do have those gyms at the intermediates, we have the gym space elsewhere, we can get by with that, especially knowing we have to have the storm shelter. So that's where kind of we landed, and you kind of talked through that last time too, and that's why you said, look at A, B, C, D, and see what that looks like. So now knowing the new numbers that John has, we just want to open it up to discussion about questions you might have for us on any of these options.
So one of the first things that jumps to my mind, I'll just kick us off here, and correct me if my rephrasing of any of this is incorrect. My initial gut feeling on option one is that one of the boons or one of the positives for option one is that it allows the continuation of our previous vision if you were to execute a phase two. If that's true, is sort of the inverse, just so we're just have all the information, is the inverse then true for option 2 or 3? Is there then an inherent negative for options 2 or 3 where it becomes more difficult to execute that vision because it's not formatted in that same way? Or do you have built in an idea that of adding in that field house space to an option 2 or 3? I'm looking to, as I dig into this, to kind of understand some of the contrast there, because again, what it seems to me is that option 1 preserves that setup.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've had that designed already, right? So we know that that does work with option 1. I think in both option 2 and 3, we have looked at, can we still add something to the south? And in both of those, it's possible. The size and what that is maybe changes potentially a little bit. And I think we've had some conversations in our steering committee meeting as we went back to what are our priorities: weight room, team rooms, wrestling rooms, court space. Then we got to talking, so I'm going to go back even further early on of like, well, if this is going to be this size, should we just have an indoor track? But it didn't meet our priorities. So I think the last couple of times we've met, because of what our funding looks like now, is if we want to try to do all of this at any time in the near future, is that indoor track space really something that we can still afford, or does that become more geared towards court space?
And I guess to further refine, so in simple terms, right, option 1 is the most expensive.
Yep.
So I'm also trying to connect or assess on a value of, if the cheaper option is taken, are we then taking on a cost or a negative that we are going to And I guess to the same thing, I'm then asking to justify the cost of option one. If there's no negative to doing it a different way, then what's the value in doing it option one's way, right? That's what I'm trying to figure out, right?
Yeah, so I think one way to look at this and think about it is option one was designed the way that it was because there was a building to the south.
Yes.
If we're saying we're not going to do that large structure, option one never would have been something that OPN put together to bring to us because just with those features, it is very inefficient.
And so that's what I'm saying so you're getting down to it. It seems that what you're saying then is that option one is maybe not a good option because it is inefficient and it is more expensive.
Correct.
And is it also fair, John, to say that when we're looking at this, like I said, we worked with a hybrid of that steering committee. We still want to go back to the full steering committee and then the full stakeholder group to have conversations. But what was interesting is when we re-looked at it, like John said, and when the track became a track was kind of the nicer to have thing. And when we take that off, they actually started to talk about, well, wow, we kind of like the efficiency of having it more of a core space.
Yep.
Those are,
I have a question.
Evan, you're asking a very good question, in my opinion, because one thing that has bothered me through the whole process is if you do phase one and then we do phase two, the cost jumps up quite a bit because all the stuff that you have to do. So if you do phase one, option one here, that'll buffer some of that cost going into phase two, am I right? Because there was a lot of expense, if I remember right, if you did phase one and then did phase two later, the overall cost was higher.
Correct.
Does this help that a little bit because we're buffering some of that or not?
I think.
Because you're putting firewalls in and you're doing all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, but I think you also gain some efficiencies, Barry, because of what the layouts of option 2 and 3 look like. Like if you think of this from an aspect of there was never going to be a field house addition to the south, option 2 and option 3 were would have been very viable options as standalone. Obviously, we create some dollars efficiencies there. So I think what your question is, but if we still add something to the south, now is that going to be even more expensive because we don't have that connection point that's in option 1?
Right.
Okay, keep going. Midhat's going to go next.
And I think, Barry, that as we look through here, option 2 and definitely option 3, adding that corridor to the east side of the gym between the gym and the proposed weight room area, that corridor gives us a lot of options for a connection to the south.
Thank you.
So I saw when Vicki was talking, she was talking about like the mechanical needs. It's the option 2 and option 3 are $200,000 lower for those in the quotes. Is that because we are never going to use that? Or like, why is that?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So what's the location? So
it's like the primary
Yep.
mechanical thing is 4.2 million here, right?
Yep.
And then when we go to the 3 options, it goes from 4.2 for option 1 to 4 million for option 2 and 3.
Yeah, that just comes. So the equipment that goes in those spaces is identical. Obviously, you're serving a lot of the same spaces, but you probably create a little bit of efficiency just in the location where that is. And the biggest piece of that is most likely the structure. So the mechanical here is a penthouse above the weight room and part below the weight room. So if you think about it as ground floor and second floor and nothing on first floor, that creates some inefficiencies where here it's sized and appropriately just to be in the lower level underneath of the wrestling room. So you create some efficiencies there for where you're going. So, and really, Midhat, that $200,000 in this overall scheme and talk isn't really a big thing right now.
And I totally understand, but I just did not want us to miss something that was already being offered in option 1, so that was my question.
Yep.
We're going to go down to Britt and then Laura.
Okay, a couple of questions. So option 2 and 3 lose area D, so we would not do anything with the Ox Gym. It would stay a gym, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Now, my question really is with option 2 and 3 is functionality. If we add a second floor on top of the wrestling room, and it's weights. Now, I don't know the schedule, but what I've heard over 7 years is that we want to create more time and more availability for students to come in. So, you know, if you're working out upstairs, is it going to disrupt what's downstairs? That's functionality. I'm curious what the coaches and the students, what their opinions would be. That also then would eliminate all of the windows on those classrooms that are currently on the second floor, correct? They would lose all of their daylight. And then with option 3, how does that design impact like code in terms of those emergency exits becoming a hallway?
Yep, so great question. So that's one thing Matthew's done quite a bit of work on, because you have 2 sets of 4-foot wide doors that come out of that, and so that hallway has to be sized appropriately for your egress requirements to be able to load both south and north out of there in the event that there is an emergency that you have to evacuate the gym. So
Just out the same doors and then down a hallway both
down
ways?
the hallways,
And that
yep,
would
and
be
there's
where the-
exit south
okay.
and exit north, so that takes care of that.
And then I see you didn't technically get there yet, but there's a picture of option 3 kind of on a Google map kind of lookout at the so we would lose the second lane and some parking spots. I've only ever used that lane to try and, you know, get in front of other people. So is there a concern of losing that second lane? Because we still have the main lane.
Right, and that main lane, like you said, Brett, I think that is the main lane that's used, and that's what we're required to have for fire truck access. So I think that second lane is more of a nice to have versus a have to have.
Okay, so in an emergency, just the main lane would become the emergency lane and we wouldn't. Okay. So I guess, not that we're picking, but I'm kind of leaning towards wanting to learn more about option 3. I like the idea that we don't add a second floor to the wrestling room and take away those windows from the classrooms. I think that's important to think about the other classes that this would impact. But I also like the connectivity of the hallway and how it kind of becomes circular and there's better access and better flow. Hallways are good at that. So I'm that, and then the potential to, if we were to add court space south of the gym, that hallway could just be opened up, or well, those doors could be connected to that. I think that makes the most sense if the size still meets the needs of expanding weight room and fitness access. I also like, I mean, I understood in the original design why we were sticking the weight room where we were sticking it, but it also seemed really far away from like the everyday use. So I kind of like that it's attached to the gym now and that it has that kind of hallway flow behind the scenes as opposed to through that big commons area. So I think that I think that it's a good option. But yeah, I would love to learn more and hear user opinions and feedback on these options. And then with the funding options you talked about earlier, I think it's dangerous to go up to that 13 million, but it would be helpful for just having it in our heads of if we just built the court space, like how much of that 13, well, technically I suppose option 3 or 2 only adds a couple million. 3 does. So how much of that leftover 10 million would we actually need if we were just going to, remember all the way back to the beginning where we were going to build a box with 3 courts in it? Like what does that look like? But I appreciate the effort and the work that went into this because these are better than I had anticipated. Not that I didn't believe in you, but I didn't know what it was going to look like when you started taking things apart.
Really great to hear, Brett.
So
We're going to go down to Laura, then Justin.
I also really appreciate the team's creativity and thinking outside the literal box. And until Director Maury brought up very good points about the weight room being adjacent to the classrooms and everything, I liked, to me, option 2 made the most sense purely from a space efficiency standpoint, because regardless, like all three of these options involve those wrestling rooms, like building out that space where the wrestling rooms are. And while I think sometimes we feel like we have, like we look out the window and there's green space, but I just tend to be more of an efficient, conservative when it comes to built structures. And taking that lane, which I also use to get around the traffic, you know, we had people specifically call that out as a concern about the traffic flow on that side. And if there was any way to kind of mitigate any sort of like noise or issue with the weight room and the light issue, I think is a very good point. That would be very concerning for me as well, especially because that side of the high school is a lot of our
I think that hallway
ag.
is social studies, though. I think.
I thought that
upper
was
hallway.
like the ag and.
That's inside.
Oh,
But
okay.
the outside hallway, I'm pretty sure, I'm only guessing because of the like posters that are outside of those classrooms, but I think that's the social studies wing.
Okay. But I would lean towards using, having the most efficient use of the space, and going to the conversation about like, oh, are we losing or gaining something by pre-building for the expanded gymnasium? So my perspective on like in option one, right? Like, oh, what are we gaining or losing by pre-building kind of that area? We've already pivoted several times, like on the design and revising these different things. And I guess for me, not making that change to the exterior, like if we don't have to, gives us options went down the road. So that would be my 2 cents.
I'm going to expand one comment I made, and then Justin can talk. I was thinking, when I was looking at this, the sound through the ceiling, but now that I'm thinking about connecting it to social studies, I also want to make sure, like, I don't know, when we work out, we play music, so is that wall between social studies and a weight room, fitness room with music, is that, like, that would be, I would want to learn more about that.
Yeah, so I'll comment on that real quick. So one thing to think about there is that doesn't necessarily have to be attached to the existing building, that there could be a gap in between that would help with a lot of sound. I don't think we can make that gap wide enough that we can still have windows that are going to have any light in, but potentially. But I think noise-wise, adjacent to those classrooms, that would be fairly easily doable to make sure that we don't intrude on that.
Clearly, the priority would be the noise. Daylight is just it's a nice thing. I would love for them not to lose their windows, but you're going to have trouble learning history when they're jamming out next door. So.
Yeah. No, hey team, this is good work. Good work. That's what I get for being patient. Okay. Just to echo what I heard a little bit with Laura, I also really love the idea of just building on top of the weight room, because it's empty space, and utilizing the space that we're creating new at the same time so that we're not restricting future ideas. I love that idea. Absolutely love that idea. As for the classrooms next door, yeah, windows are nice, but push and shove, we got, give and take here. With that being said, I was just thinking about the flow and how do kids get there and what's the overall, path around and whatnot. And then I kept thinking, maybe the top of the weight room is not the most accessible, and it really constricts on how you get there. And so I thought maybe that's not the best idea, but I love it. It is 15,000 square feet. What I didn't see on here was what is the weight room square feet size that you've got for Plan 1?
10,000.
10,000.
And then the fitness room that's below it is 4,000, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, so that's
About
14,000
total, give or take.
And so then for option 3, you've got it down to it's about 13,000. Is that correct?
Yep.
What's stopping you from making it just a little bit further out, just to give you even extra room?
That drive lane. So we're really pushed out as far as we can get there and not getting into that drive lane. And then, so that sets our east boundary, if you will. And then really the west boundary of the weight room is really set by what our corridor, the width of the corridor that needs to be to maintain our egress. So we're really kind of landlocked as large as an east and west as we can get with that weight room because of those constraints.
I was just thinking, great answer, and just because I get paid just to sit and look and think here. Paid, right? If we took out that parking there, right, does that change? If you go to your very last slide, if we take out that row of parking, does that, does that, because we're adding so much and we're not taking the other stuff, does that change anything for us?
No, I mean, 'cause if you remember, I think we netted, man, this is going to test my memory, Justin. If we did the large box to the south, I think we still netted like 50 spaces overall. Obviously, we're not taking away anything to the south with this, so our net is going to go up 150 to 200 from where we were originally. So losing a few spots here and there is we're still have a lot more parking spaces than what we've had in the past.
We want to keep that memory out there, though, because if we are phasing this and we do have long-term plans of putting courts there, we are going to lose some of that parking that we plan to lose. So just remember, in 2 years or 3 years or whatever, when we look at those courts, don't say we can't lose any parking. No, we have to.
Yep, but where I was going with that was if we take that parking out, does that allow you to creep the weight room further because now all of a sudden you don't have cars on one side of it? I was just thinking, you know, abstract, a little bit bigger.
Yeah, and I think this is fair to say, the athletic directors have kind of echoed some of the same thoughts on how can we squeak out just a little more space. So just know that this is not fully designed. This is what does this look like, and I think that would be the push from the ADs is how can we get to that 10,000 number at a minimum. Now, in my role, what I have to remind them is 1 square foot, $500. 1 square foot, $500. So we have to make that balance of here's what we need to make this work, but here's also a budget we have to stay in. So there's a balance there of, yeah, I mean, 20,000 square foot, they'd love that. Well, we don't have those dollars, right? So there has to be some give and some take on what works, fits the needs, but still fits the budget too.
I think there's also something to point out that even though that 10,000 was in option A or in option 1, and it's 9,000 here, this is more efficient. You think about that space. I don't know if you want to talk to that, but it's just not as efficient.
Yep, I can talk to that 100%. So because of the way that laid out, again, because we were trying to attach something to it, you can see that is not a perfect rectangle. So there is some space in there that is not necessarily utilized. Think of that as some triangles in there that don't really fit to do anything. Now, if you would pull some of that space out because it's not efficient and you put that into a rectangular box like we have here, I know this is not a perfect rectangle, it's pretty close, and here, that's probably even a little bit more efficient. So do you need that 10,000 square feet? So I think to kind of a roundabout way of answering your question, I think we create some efficiencies when we're in a rectangular space, but also we are kind of landlocked there, but we are going to push to try to get that where it is and still stay within the budget.
Thank you. Evan?
Yeah, I like something you said, Britt, and I know that trying to actually give estimates like this you don't like, but just conceptually you had talked about, you know, what does the box cost, right? If you strip it all down, in some of the numbers you've given for your Area E breakdown, just for some mental placeholders, is that top line number for that Area E breakdown, that 20 million, is that something that you could maybe consider what Britt's speaking to as just the box cost?
You know, Evan, that's really...
And I know that you probably don't want to answer that.
Yep. I mean,
Well,
it really
this
at
wouldn't
this
be the
point,
box.
yeah, at this
This
point
is
in
way
time, that's
bigger.
really tough to understand. One, where's it go? What's the civil look like? What is now in the box? Is it still a full indoor 200-meter track? Is it not? Is there team rooms that are added to it like there's before? Is it not? So I think until we really understand is the new need still what the old need was, it's about impossible to try to even put a guess to it.
Fair enough.
Plus, you've got in that, if you did that big box, we've taken away some of the work that was counted in C, like that entry work and all that to account for the level changes and stuff. So I don't think you can necessarily say that.
Where are the, like the teacher offices that we were going to move out of the locker rooms and into the new, like where do
That's
those?
to be designed. We will have to figure
So
out. that.
somewhere in there?
So I think what
Okay.
we'll have to do is we'll have to work with, go to the larger steering committee and then go into with the larger stakeholder group and figure out how we could do that. Maybe the team room in that aqua color, maybe that becomes, part of that becomes the AD offices. We didn't get into that depth. We wanted to give you
Right.
ideas of.
Oh, I
We're
figured
we're
that
getting into the weeds right now with you guys, because what you really needed to know is eventually our feelings about option 1, 2, or 3. Do we want standalone? Do we want to continue with what our original, what is our expectation for how far are we willing to push the dollar? And also knowing that we all know that costs are never going to get, what's your line? Construction was always cheaper yesterday, not tomorrow. I'm getting better about that, and so what does that mean? And then Laura had a couple of questions. I do want us to stay out of the weeds a little bit, because what we were asking them tonight was more conceptual. We're not approving we're approving what can we help you make the best decisions forward. If we're going to walk away from option 1 as no longer standalone but a definite merge, or are we walking away from 2 things that potentially 2, if I get this correct, option 2 and option 3, if we did nothing else, we could actually, those are standalones. Our hope will be to obviously continue the original plan in the dream, but if necessary, they could be standalones. Is that correct? Thank you. We have Laura, and do you want to go? Go for it.
I will call my question a weed, and I will not go into it.
Thank you. So here's our final conversation. We're not voting on tonight a proposal. That's not what was out here tonight. They need direction, and I see that constantly, especially in our superintendent's memos. We are at that point of needing guidance. What the problem is, your last question for us is finalizing budget. You have on the finalized funding and budget decisions.
So that is not for tonight, but that is what you guys kind of need, maybe your homework is to think about that, right? Like, are we comfortable with this now? I know maybe a bit of a question that's probably in some people's mind is, John, it's really hard to finalize that when we don't know what this 10-year plan is, and that's fair, because what's out there. That work is still continuing too. Myself and Andy and DE and OPN, we've had several meetings on that and are trying to get that down to something that's digestible. I think Vicki said, like, I'm going to talk construction terms, spec books that are this thick. She's like, yeah, that final product might be 2 of those, which is awesome because there's a ton of details and data there that we can use for quite a long time. But how do you get, I can't present 2 spec books to you guys. I got to get that down to something
our
that's
homework
digestible.
is greater awareness. Our homework was, now this is the numbers that we are getting more and more familiar with. Our homework was to say, we're not voting on it tonight, but option 1 would be it's intentionally blended to the next phase. Option 2 and 3 could be, if they had to be standalones, and that we're at the next session of, do we need a work session then to discuss, because we're not making decisions. You don't have finalized things to work. So I'm asking you then, how do we move this forward and continue this process of this very important project?
Yeah, so I think I would look at this as more of just an update. Here's the work we've done, here we are, we have a few feasible designs. I think really what next steps are for the administration is to continue to refine options with our steering committees and our stakeholder groups, and then in August bring that back of, here's the 3 options that we saw after some revision, refinement, questions, input. Here's really where we feel is best to move forward. And then at that point in time would be some action steps from the board.
Yes, and I think addressing, especially Britt's questions about sound competition and things like that. I live in a building that was not a consideration until after it happened. Is again the stakeholder moment. How do you physically see and what will be our barriers? And that should be something I feel that should be discussed amongst the design team and the stakeholders.
Yep.
And for us, we gave you that concern. Could you address that to us professionally? How do you have class if you're also doing this? And how do you do this if you're also doing that?
Yep.
And what are your solutions for that? If that could also be part of that.
I have a quick process question. So as far as like these stakeholder groups and these meetings and your work on this, is any of this work postponing the 10-year facilities plan?
I guess, no. mean, for this team, Matthews helped with the high school because of this project, but really the rest of the OPN, this is pretty fair, I think, right, Vicki? The rest of the OPN team that is doing the facilities work is not part of this team.
Okay, because I understand, like, you're all kind of on both things, and these are both very interrelated discussions, and I would want to know if time spent on this is making it take longer to get to that 10-year facilities plan.
I would say, I'll just be transparent about this, the holdup in that is probably me, because I'm only one person and I can't be in 15 different spots and do year end and do all of this. So I am probably like the funnel of not allowing all of this to be 100 miles an hour at the same time.
Yeah, and
So wait. Before we get any further, though, the conversation right now is on this. I want to make sure we don't get too far on work management and things like that, because I'm just throwing that out there. We are on a task right now with an agenda item, and I'd like us to stay within that scope. So just trying to be prudent on that one. Very well noted, because obviously the 10-year plan is critical to what happens here. Both of them have the same weighted value as we continue moving forward. I would rather us express our concern about making sure they're moving forward without talking about your personal work hours, and that's with your boss, so not so much there.
But there is continuity, just so you know. Toby and I are continuity with all the projects happening at Linn-Mar, and so we are dialed in to everything and helping to orchestrate those, but they are in tandem. They're not.
I just brought it up because next steps and process is part of this. So, but Britt,
No, I was going to say John actually brought it up before you did. He said when we were looking at the numbers, that number is always so contingent on what else do we have to spend on. So it's going to be really difficult for me, I'm not going to speak for everybody else, to look at 3 options with price tags in August and not know if I want to spend the extra $2 million on this if I don't know what's in the 10-year plan. So I kind of feel like it does sound like a work session, but it's a work session that evaluates this along with the 10-year plan.
Agreed.
And the bucket of money that we have to spend.
Most agreed. The acknowledgement is they do go hand in hand. The acknowledgement is it's a lot of work, and the acknowledgement is we are all very concerned about being fiduciary responsible. So I am not wanting in any way to diminish anyone's input, but other than, is there anything more that you wanted to share with us? Is there anything more that you wanted us to be aware of as we move forward, as this was your update?
That was it.
Anybody else?
Is that fair, guys?
Yes,
Sorry.
absolutely.
We have one comment from our brand.
You gave us the mission in May, and that's what we're continuing to do, but we felt it prudent to give you an update. Does that make sense? Nancy?
Yes, absolutely. And Vicki, I just want to take this time to publicly congratulate you and thank you for all the things that you've done at OPN. You've been here all 8 years that I've been here now, starting year 9. So we're certainly appreciative of all that you've done. So thanks.
Been a delight. Yep, I will miss you guys very much. Yeah. I can come back. I will be watching.
Thank you very much. At this time, we are going to move on to item number 502, our Marion City Council reports. We have just a quick touch point for June 18th and July 7th, one from Barry and one from Laura.
June 18th, nothing to report.
Thank you. Laura?
Nothing to report.
Thank you very much. We're moving on then to item number 503, Superintendent's Report.
All right, thank you. Thank you, board. It's a great day and time to be a Linn-Mar Lion, so hopefully my updates won't be super long. It feels like I've got a ton of stuff on here, but I do want to make sure that we just hit some updates that I think everybody should be aware of. You know, it's been a hot couple weeks for our kids, but even though it's summertime, we still have camps and our buildings are busy, so I'm sure you see that even with your kids that are in school. So even though we're not in session, we've been super busy. Just would first like to publicly thank the board for allowing me the opportunity to serve as your superintendent, so I'm extremely excited to get started. With that being said, the transition has been really well. Amy's been super helpful. She and I were able to do a lot of stuff this spring, so we're already working on just keeping the ball rolling with what's been good. I have to thank my cabinet for that. They've been incredibly helpful with getting transition activities and getting some of our new people caught up to speed. Want to make sure we introduce Chad Lang as our new associate superintendent, and then Natalie Milkey, who's our new director of communications. So super excited to bring them both on board. We did some planning with them as they onboarded, and then we'll do that, and we'll continue to do that with some of our new administrators that will start here in August. So I appreciate you letting me recognize some kids. That was super fun. It's always nice to have students, and sorry that not all of them could be here, but as we were looking at wrapping up the year, just wanted to share some highlights with you. And we'll do fine arts at a future meeting, but just so you know the amount of kids that we have least involved with athletics through this last school year, the 25-26 year. We had 497 participants in the fall, 323 in the winter, 426 in the spring, and 136 in the summer. So a lot of students doing a lot of things outside of the classroom, which is awesome. So congratulations again to Abby, and we'll recognize some more students at future board meetings. Just wanted to also highlight a couple other things. Special thanks to Hills Bank. They donated their classroom cash program, so they presented the foundation with a check for $1,441. We had a student artist highlight, Bennett S. from Excelsior, here in first place in the Quad Cities 10th Annual Chalk Art Fest Youth Division. So good job for Bennett. We had our robotics. This was toward the end of the year. Oak Ridge Lego Blasters for earning the Core Values finalist honors and placing in the top 3 out of 68 teams during the American Robotics Invitational. I also mentioned Drea earlier as our girls soccer participant, but also congratulations to the team. They made it to the state tournament. And then I just want to give you some other updates of some other things that we're working on. So, you know, we've had a lot of legislation updates, so you've seen those coming from IASB. We've been sitting in on webinars for those, just trying to really understand what all the new legislation entails. We're still waiting on the department, so that's pretty typical this time of year. They send a letter to the field with a summary, but as far as additional guidance, we'll keep working on those things. So we'll keep you updated as those things change, and I do have one update to share with you. How we do that with cabinet, just so you know, is we divvy that up and everybody has kind of legislation assigned to their area. So it's a really good way for us to keep track of that. I want to mention our amazing operations and maintenance crew, Andy and his team, Jamie, Drew, the high school kids that I see out here mowing. They've been trying to keep up with the grass, but really just got a lot of good work going on in our facilities over the summer. The Indian Creek Playground will start next week. Parking lot you see on the south side of the high school renovations are going really well. Oak Ridge roof project is right on schedule. Band room's broken ground and started, and just want to make sure I thank our custodians because this is the busiest time of year for them. They move all the furniture out, wax all those floors, and I've been out in our buildings, and our custodial staff is just working really hard to make sure that we're ready to go. One last thing I wanted to highlight was a legislative change, and you probably saw our communication come out with that. We are going to allow 8th grade students to participate in high school athletics. We really wanted to announce that publicly tonight at the meeting, but we also had to align all of that with our registration for our student athletes so that our administrators, our athletic directors can get in touch with them, make sure that they know all the rules and requirements there. So we've developed guidance on that. We sent that to incoming 8th grade parents on July 1. I would just want to be clear that there won't be any additional cost or teams or coaches, but it's already going to just flow into the setup that we currently have. We'll continue to update some board policy. So as we look at this, we do have board policy around 8th grade participating. So the policy committee will look with that. We'll approve our first reading, hopefully, on August 17th, which will allow us to at least have our policy in line before we start with students in sports, or the 8th graders anyway. So really, for us, it's more of an enrollment issue. A lot of the surrounding schools were doing that, and we wanted to make sure that we weren't losing kids to enrollment and extending that opportunity. So with that, I'll take any questions.
I do have just a couple questions.
Yeah.
And I want to preface this with, I'm not against 8th graders playing high school sports. I just have questions.
Yeah.
The whole time I've been on the board, we have always heard from athletics that we are a no-cut school. Side by side with that, one of the continual messages I hear from high school students and parents who are athletes is that while we're a no-cut school, it's still really, the bench is open, but only a certain set of students get to play. So I guess my concern is, are we really letting 8th graders play, or are we letting them sit on the bench with the rest of the students? And I guess I would like to learn more about how this is going to impact students that are already complaining that they don't get to play. If we're truly a no-cut school, then yes, the 8th graders get to join, but are they really joining a team that they get to play with, or is it really just that they're going to practice with the high school kids and not get play time? So I would like, in future, I know you can't get into that today, but
No, let me give you a couple brief snippets of that. So, yeah, I mean, those are things certainly the athletic directors were thinking about. We do not have a lot of kids signed up as of last week when I checked. I think, Chad, did they say 13? I think we have 13. And that's something that we put in the guidance too for families to think about, because it's one thing to play, it's another thing to just sit on the bench. The 8th grade students are going to have to think too, because if they participate in high school, then they become ineligible for middle school. So that's another consideration. Nobody has to play, but just so the board knows, JV girls basketball last year, we only had 6 kids. One of them was injured and one of them became sick. And so even for a school like Linn-Mar size JV basketball, we had to cancel games. And so our hope would be to not have kids participate, and still it's going to be evaluated by coaches that are on those teams to determine who plays and what level they are. But at least in a few circumstances, possibly give us some numbers that will prevent us from having to cancel games.
okay. Like I said, I'm not against it.
Yeah,
I just
good
want to,
question.
I want to understand the picture of the concerns we already hear about athletic participation and how that would impact. So,
Yep, good. All right.
Any
thank
other
you.
questions? Phew, first one down.
First one.
Got it. Well done. Believe it or not, we have no unfinished business, so we have no items under 600. We move on to our items under 700, our new business. Item number 701, approval of open enrollment request. I need a motion, please.
I make a motion to approve open enrollment request as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Barry, a second by Justin. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Anyone abstaining? Motion carries. Item number 702, approval of hourly rates for aquatic center staff.
Motion to approve the proposed updated hourly rates for the aquatic center staff as presented in Exhibit 702.1.
I need a second.
Second.
Second by Evan. A motion by Midhat and a second by Evan. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? The motion is carried. Item number 703, approval of special education strategist level 2, or level 2, level 3 hiring incentive. I need a motion, please.
make a motion to approve the distribution of a financial incentive to aid in the hiring and retention of strategist 2 and 3 special education teachers with a hiring bonus of $5,000 to be paid over 2 years, $2,500 after each completed year of employment.
Second.
We have a motion by Britt, a second by Laura. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say yes.
I have a
Yes.
question.
Yes.
Oh, wait, pause.
Sorry, I just was curious how many openings we have this year, because I know we've been kind of tracking that over the last couple of years. We only have 3. Great job.
Well done. I'm sorry, we're going to continue.
Well, yeah, it's always a moment in time. But in past years, one year we were talking like 36, and another year we were 25 and 17, and so it's just 3 is great.
Thank you. Well done, HR. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? The motion has carried. Item number 704, discussion of 2026-27 legislative priorities. I'm going to give us an opportunity. We're saying the word discussion, but it's more highlighting this. The Iowa Association of School Boards has provided us with their 2026-27 legislative priorities. You have the packet in front of you. We are tonight doing an initial review. We are going to dedicate ourselves to doing homework. We're going to dedicate ourselves also at this point, it should be somewhat familiar to us because in August, we do need to select those. In August, you'll be asked to come with your top goals and what you would like ISAB to be bringing forth as legislative liaison, lobbyists. So I put that out there, and if there's no further discussion, what you're doing is acknowledging you have the book, you're acknowledging you have homework, You are acknowledging that time well spent to get to August meeting. Is there any discussion? Go for it.
One request, Britt, I know you'll love this. Could you look at this and last year's and the years before and the years before, and when we reconvene, just let me know if anything really has changed?
It's summer, Justin.
When you get time. Thanks.
Hey, Katie, you had mentioned to bring their top choices. Are you
Don't we
putting a
have to
number
submit
to that?
4.
4.
Thank you.
Yes, do that. So you got your homework.
Summary for Justin.
And I would ask each one of you to also do the same homework that you're asking of Britt, is to look back. The bottom line is, these are our goals. It is our district's desire to see these things highlighted. So I would not want us to shy away from something, or just say ditto last year. So I think that's good advice.
As much as I joked about it, I think it's actually a good conversation to have, because if something's moving and we can continue the momentum of something, or if something is just dead in the water at the moment, then let's use our energy. It's not shying away and saying it's not important, but yeah, if something's moving or not moving, or there's ripples in the water somewhere, then taking advantage of that is definitely a consideration worth having.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on to items number 800, our consent agenda. I need a motion, please.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I need a second.
Second.
And a second by Midhat. Is there a discussion before we go any further? I'd like to recognize our 2 retirees, Kim Ophoff and Donna Robbins. Did I say Kim's name correctly? Oh, I'm so proud of me. All right, there we go. And anybody else? Go ahead.
I just, at a upcoming meeting, it would be really nice. There's a lot of curriculum in this consent agenda. And while I don't ever want to have individual conversations about each piece of curriculum we use, it is our job to understand what we're using. So it would be great if these could be paired with an overarching, this is what we're doing and this is how we scale at K-12 and how transitions between curriculum work. So that when we get questions about what we're approving and how it works, we can speak to that.
Isn't that fun? And do you want to speak to how we are going to address that? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, good question, Britt. And we had talked about that, or at least talked about that with Katie and Justin about, we also, for another future work session this fall, want to get into our curriculum review cycle so that you guys can see that. I mean, these are all, I know it's a lot in there, but these are just all our annual renewals. And so
I'm familiar with most of them, yeah. I recognize most of them.
Yeah.
But, Evan's super new and probably doesn't know what we use some of these for, and the names aren't always,
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, yeah, that's something that we're looking at our board calendar to see when we can get that scheduled.
Part of that, I would love to hear the new law that limits K-5 to 60 minutes of screen time a day. Given how much of our curriculum is online, I would love to learn how we are shifting to.
Just the school AI, I know when we added that, like when you brought that to us last year, it was kind of like, oh, we're going to try this out and see if it works. So I'm assuming if it's on here, it means it's being used and working and they like it?
Yeah, so if you remember, we have a task force of, I think you gave me the name of a parent. I have a parent on there. We have some staff. We have some administrators, some of our instructional coaches. We actually took this question to the task force as like, do we not renew it? Do we just do a single year extension, or do we look in a multi-year? Partly because of the way things have changed with AI, the task force decided to only recommend doing 1 year in case things change. But yes, they are doing that. We provided a lot of professional development on school AI at various levels throughout last year. Okay. And so that would continue for this year. And that'll be something that the Chad will work with that task force, and again, they'll have to kind of make a decision on what they want that to look like moving forward for the following year.
It's great to hear that, that's continuing to make progress in their meeting and making good decisions.
Does anybody else have any questions on the consent agenda? If not, all those in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion has carried. That gets us items to items number 900, our board calendar and communications. I'm going to highlight a couple upcoming events. July 23rd, we have Laura going to Marion City Council. We need August 6th, please.
I got it.
Thank you, Barry. And August 20th.
I can do that one.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate that greatly. A couple things to look. We have some new, look at August 18th. Our staff welcome back. You'll get more information from that from our new superintendent. I want to make sure that as we hear about that, just put it on your calendar. We're not sure what it all is. I mean, you got some great stuff that you've been planning. And I want to make sure that we just compliment wherever that goes. We'll hear from you and you tell us how we can fit in.
Yeah, and I think, my opinion is I think that's a very, very important session for all of us to attend if we can possibly do it.
And how fun is it that it's in our own performance center? So,
Director Lau Lancaster,
Yeah,
I had, well, I don't know if it's one question or two questions about things that aren't on the calendar
go for it.
that I'm wondering about. I wondered, and I realize there's some fluctuations here, but the ribbon cutting for the Indian Creek Playground?
It just begins construction this week. I don't know when
It just
is-
started today, so Laura, we don't have a date on that, but we'll get something out there eventually.
Thank you very much. That's a,
Yeah, I have no question that they're working really hard. I'm just like, since we have the first day of school on here, and I know those kiddos, so if we knew it, great.
We don't.
If we don't,
but thank you.
Fine.
There's
My
our
guess is
first
it's not
PR
gonna be
job.
done
There we're
by the
going
first day
out
of
and
school.
about. So there you go.
okay. And then my other question was, I don't see any scheduled facilities advisory committee on here, and I know we had talked about maybe touching base in June, and so I'm just kind of checking in to see if that's, again, and John, I thoroughly acknowledge your very full plate. It's like a whole buffet of a plate that you have, but if that had come up at some point, I was wondering if that was going to be scheduled soon.
I have the same question about finance audit. We're not on there either.
So,
We'll get it scheduled.
yep. We'll get them published as well. Thank you very much. They should be set. I know that, sorry, I'm on policy and I know policies date off the top of my head. Anybody else? Thank you very much for requesting those additional dates be put on our calendars. If there's no further discussion, I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn at 6:22 p.m.
6:22 p.m. I have a motion by Britt, a second by Barry. Is there any discussion? Without any discussion, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.